Hello, everyone. Welcome to this second to last session of the 2026 UAP Detection and Tracking Summit. This is session 14 with James Fowler on strategic insights from the front lines of UAP detection. Throughout the summit, we've learned a lot about the persistent nature of UAP across the Earth system domain, the maritime, atmospheric, and near space domains. And over the last 2 days, we have covered why detection matters, the technologies involved, the science of UAP detectable signatures, and the standards needed to generate high quality data. The takeaway for me is straightforward. If we want to drive forward our broad societal understanding of UAP, we need that data. And to generate that quality data, we need to be able to detect and track UAP. But detection is an operational reality. We have to actually get out into the field with these technologies to make these discoveries. And this isn't really just about discovery science alone. It's also about generating a more clear and comprehensive intelligence picture about what is in our skies in order to inform decision makers, the scientific community, and the public at large. And that's why we're ending the summit here with this session on strategic insights from the field. James Fowler will walk us through how UAP detections have emerged over time, how a practical classification framework has been developed, and what he reports observing craft morphology, patterns of interaction, potential instances of interaction, and possible interference. This isn't just an academic question. It's also an aerospace and sovereignty question. And it has major implications both for commercial aviation, for military operations, and for coordination in the intergovernmental space. So with that, I'm pleased to welcome James Fowler to the UAP Summit. James is a technologist and strategist working at the intersection of technology, security, and global strategy, with a particular emphasis on drone and counter-drone operations in the emerging field of air intelligence. He focuses on building tools and frameworks that make airspace activity more transparent, more actionable, treating air safety as both a technical and strategic challenge. With that, welcome James Fowler.
Reed, thanks for the introduction. I appreciate it. I appreciate the opportunity and platform to be here to share information and further our understanding. I'll go ahead and hop into a presentation here.
Great. And for those watching, please use the Q&A feature to ask your questions, and we'll make time for that at the end.
Okay, I'm assuming you can see that, Reed?
Yep, looks good.
Terrific. Okay, let's get into it. So we've been working on drone and counter-drone efforts since 2020. First Wargame was in 2021. To those Wargames, we bring some of the world's best system operators and thinkers and minds around these problem sets. Understand that we're focused on modern defense of national security facilities and sovereign airspace to develop tactics and understanding around what works, what doesn't work between various technology types and threat models. So through those efforts, we've generated terabytes of data. The data encompasses everything from electro-optical or daylight cameras to middle wave infrared, shortwave infrared cameras, IR cameras, radar data, SIGINT, signals intelligence, just a plethora of different technologies that are employed. So it was actually through these events that we started making discoveries at these war games. We've run multiple war games since 2021 through 2024. And those war games can be anywhere from 2 weeks to a month long at a time, which is important because when you run shorter events, we found you don't get the same results as we found with the longer events. So in 2021, actually at our first war game, we had an actionable discovery. And that was where we discovered the Class 1 or Tetra UAP. It was on the last day of the event, and we were wrapping up the war game. I was on top of a roof with a couple of young interns. We had binoculars, and we were looking for drones and some other things in the sky that we were working on in the war game. Understand, it wasn't my war game. I was the call it system enabler, the architect. My deliverable from the war game was actually tactics, white papers on tactics for defense and offense. So we were on the roof of this tall building looking for drones that were inbound on a sortie. I knew everything was in the sky because I orchestrated everything for both sides of the equation. And mid-exercise, I was called off the roof to come see something weird, as my system operator described it on the camera system. So I came down off the roof and understand we didn't see or hear anything on the roof with our own eyes and ears. Came off the roof and we saw this. This was our first ever sighting of UAP. So you note there's 7 UAP. This is the original image. There is no modification to it. Hasn't been enhanced or changed. There's 7 craft here flying. They're actually moving to fly directly over our site. So they deviated their flight path from a west to east, north of us, down, and they deviated south to overfly our position, and then overflew us. This is in broad daylight. I would say noon or so in the afternoon, out in the desert out west. A lot of the lines and other things you're seeing are because of the very bright nature of the skies as they overpassed us. So, and you see there as the camera operator saw Jinky trying to keep the gimbal on the targets as they overflew us. Shortly thereafter, he didn't stay with them too long. This was the first ever sighting of anything anomalous, and we were focused on our deliverables to our client. So that story wasn't our focus, frankly. The interesting thing about the 2021 sighting is we left that event and said, what could that have been? Was that ours? And somebody just didn't tell me they were bringing that to the event. Was it somebody else? So we assumed that it might have been somebody else and said, well, between 21 and 22, what can we do to, if it was somebody else, evoke a stronger reaction? So that then thus began the architectural concepts around the dog whistle. We began developing different tactics and using the technology on site differently. We had access to tens of millions of dollars worth of equipment, commercial, some of it classified and some of it off the shelf, not very sophisticated in nature, if you will. So we harnessed that technology a little bit differently in 2022 to kind of see what would happen. In 2022, we were able to evoke a much stronger reaction. Now that we had a measuring stick with the tetras, we knew what to look for that class of UAP. So we saw the tetra and all the way up to the class 5 in 2022. So just because it's not listed doesn't mean we didn't see it. It just means that the new discoveries are as listed. And I say discoveries meaning it's the first time we noted it with our government operations and commercial operations in side by side. So it's interesting that in 2022, we saw hundreds of sorties now that we knew what we were looking for at the tetra. Everything else we saw, I think we saw like 4 or 5 tic tacs, a couple class 3s, like 4 class 4s, and 1 class 5. So we saw a couple hundred sorties. Of the tetras, we didn't have them on radar that we knew of at the time. We hadn't developed the capacity to see them yet on radar. So it wasn't until 2023 we made that discovery. And frankly, it was an engineering effort to be able to see them. So we started using direction finding and scanning the spectrum, and we noted some signals that were in the area when UAPs were present and not in the area where they were gone. And we actually happen to have some capability to direction find and geolocate signals. So we started using that technology between sorties for our customers to kind of see, okay, what was in the sky. Previous to 2023, so 21 or actually 22, excuse me, we just used a camera to scan until we discovered the signals. And then in 2022, we started direction finding the UAPs, specifically the tetras, and we could see them on our SIGINT systems first. We could direction find them, then we cue the camera to them and see them. So what's interesting is, sometimes UAPs are behind clouds, and we'd be direction finding them behind the cloud, and then they pop out, we'd see them with the camera. So a very effective methodology to use, very expensive methodology to use as well. That last bullet there about seeing multiple class 1s potentially crashing in 2022, they were coming down vertically or nadir over our site where we were running the now called dog whistle at, which was separate from the event site where the people and government bodies and equipment were at. So there were 4 class ones that descended directly from over us and didn't arc out, if you will, to a horizontal egress position in the sky. And again, we didn't have them on radar at the time. We weren't sure the altitudes, so we were guessing around 10,000 feet AGLs where they would kind of begin to go from vertical to horizontal, and then probably around 5,000 or 6,000 feet AGL, we think they started the horizontal egress away from us. So we saw 4 that didn't look like they did that. They went actually behind the hills. We delayed searching for them. It sounds simple to say, well, you know, holy crap, maybe a UFO or UAP just crashed. Of course, you're going to freak out and go do something and go check it out. But honestly, that's not how the real world works. We were there for a paid contract for a client doing specifically what was required for the contract. You can't just take people under contract and run off and gallivant in the desert. So we had to delay until there was downtime. We had significant flooding that day, actually for 4 more days after that. By the time we got out there to look in the desert, we had 20 or so folks shoulder to shoulder and then spread out across a valley searching. We didn't know what we were looking for. We found nothing, but it's a vast, vast desert, very rugged terrain. So, but this doesn't change the fact that they did descend behind the hills before they disappeared, unlike the rest of them. So potentially they crashed, but who knows what you're looking for, right? Here's a video of a class 3. This has been edited. Part of the editing process was we just zoomed in and enhanced. Note that ProPixel did this work. He does really good work editing and helping us to view things in video footage. So he actually did this for us and was able to center the object and make it viewable. Normally it's bouncing all over the screen. They're very hard to track. As part of the editing process, the vibration was removed. A lot of UAPs we observe are vibrating violently. The class 3 is no different, as it pulses and changes strength of image, if you will, of light. It does vibrate violently as it moves. So that's a class 3. 2023, actually, like the last 4 days of the event, we had a top-notch radar engineer on site, and he was able to figure out some modifications to our radar load sets, which kind of finalized our it completed our ability to actually see the UAPs on radar. So the last 2 or 3 days, we actually had them on radar for the first time, which taught us that actually they were probably on radar more often than that. We just didn't know it yet. So we were able to actually see them on radar. I actually began working with several technology providers and encouraged them. I took the specifications from the UAPs we were noting since 21, took those specifications and worked with them to start developing drone detection technology. The UAPs actually taught us what to look for in the sky to find things that have signature management happening. So we started applying some of those lessons into modern technology developments. Those technology developments are in use by different organizations, specifically U.S. government and Department of War. But they're not in use for UAPs. They're in use for actual air defense against other technologies like hypersonics and signature managed threats. But interesting that was derived from UAP observations. Also in 2023, we saw our first class 6 and our first class 7 jellyfish. And it was nice to see coming out the gate that day 1 when the UAP showed up, we actually had them on radar. We did have the class 6 conduct some active operations against a team. What's interesting is in 2023, we segregated our UAP activity and downtime away from anything else in the environment. So we took our team of a small team of less than 10 and went out into the hills away from everyone else, just to validate that the UAPs would come to us. Note that in 23, we were running, I think, 24-hour or 18-hour operations. So it was mostly a night event, and during the day, we went off on our own to see if we could see UAPs. We've never seen a UAP at night ever on our instrumentation. That could be because they're not in the sky, because we don't see them on radar, but we do see everything else on radar. So we would assume that if they were there, we'd have them on radar as well. Previous to not having them on radar, we assumed that maybe they were coming out at night and we just couldn't see them with our electro-optical and infrared systems. So regardless, we have no data, no validation of night flight activity with UAP whatsoever. But while we were out in the hills working, and the Class 6 was conducting not just signature management, but some other offensive things that I'm not at liberty to discuss, it did hit our equipment with an energy weapon. There were some other provocative actions taking place by the team at the time before those actions could be engaged or enabled. The UAP actually engaged us first. So does that indicate foreknowledge or the ability of the system operator driving, flying, or operating those craft, or the craft itself, to understand our intentions and to counter us? Or does that indicate just bad timing? Very doubtful based on the other activities occurring. But interestingly, that it did engage us. We do have those signals captured. We do know the waveform used. We do know a lot of the particulars about how much energy that was and what it was directed at, if you will. At the end of the day, it did turn all of our systems to the OFF position, as in laptops, systems on battery, on generator were all turned to the off position. By the hardware itself, and I won't get into that, but there's reasons why that can occur. This is a Class 6 zoomed in. It hasn't been modified. As you zoom in on these things, you do lose some clarity. So it's not, they're already very hard to image anyway. When it's not emitting the kaleidoscope of colors, it vibrates less. The vibration has been taken out again because of the positioning. You can kind of see that there where the auto tracking system is trying to latch onto it and can't because of the vibration. Just to show you, these ones actually vibrate so much that our non-modified radar load sets think that it's a propeller when it vibrates, but then when it quits vibrating, it loses color, it goes away. So it does vibrate so fast that to the human eye, it does look like there's two of them in the sky, but it's really just one vibrating between two positions. So that was 23, very fruitful year for us. 24 was the first time we were hired to support UAP targeting and tracking. We made more discoveries at this war game and at this event. And we did make an observation of our first Class 8. Again in 2024, we saw all 8 classes of UAP, multiple sorties, not hundreds. I would say probably 75 or so total sorties that year. We were only there, I think, for 10 days, so it was less time than we're accustomed to. The Class 8 we did see wasn't a constant descent. I think the first altitude we noted it at on radar and visually was 6,000 meters. And the last observation we have is about 300, 350 meters above ground level. Unfortunately, I was injured in a horrible accident that same day as I made that observation, which required multiple surgeries and my own fun helicopter ride out to a hospital. By the time I was able to get a team back out there, it was actually the next year with the Skywatcher team. We actually took a helicopter out there and searched. Jake Barber actually flew us around for a few hours searching for the wreckage of that Class 8 in case it had crashed. We made no findings. If we had made findings, I have no doubt it would be well known. But again, what are we looking for? When we're looking for these things, we're looking for like a Roswell, weather balloon, sticks and aluminum and foil, or are we looking for, something organic, or we're looking, we have no idea what we're looking for. I would assume a black body craft of some kind, probably. But again, we don't know what we're looking for, and it's such a vast desert and very rugged, so very, very hard to find anything. So we began the Skywatcher effort. Now we adopted the name of my technology development efforts, the Skywatcher project, and pulled it into this company, and began a joint endeavor combining multiple backgrounds. So helicopter pilots, trained observers. Jake Barber brought his team, which was very well trained in observations, specifically from an Air Force mindset and tactical mindset. Very helpful to add to the team. And then we also brought in the psionics and the other folks and the other approaches to this problem set, just to see what would happen. So there's so much to unfold there, but that's not the point of this conversation. But we did discover or have some observations what we believe was a Class 9 egg. We also churned the Class 10, the Tesseract, from a developmental into actually a class. And that was based on not on necessarily more data, although more data was collected. It was actually based on just more observations and determining that the Class 10 wasn't a different class. We try to reserve classification until we have sufficient data, except for the egg. All 11 classes have had a multitude of data on hand before we actually call it out. So with the Skywatcher team, we actually did some new things. With the other events we'd run, we'd never had an opportunity to actually conduct an intercept. So we did start vectoring. I would hop on the helicopter with the pilots, and then the ground team would vector us to the UAPs, and we try to intercept about 25 of them. It's really hard to do a thing like air-to-air intercepts. I'm not an Air Force pilot nor an Air Force anything. Go Army. But it's a very difficult operation to run, especially when you're doing other things like trying to track an anomalous air vehicle. So, we'd see the UAP coming in, maybe say to our north, deviate from their, west to east flight path, let's call it that. When we see them deviate down, if they're low enough for the helicopter to do an intercept, then we'd get ready, try and get off the ground before they were 10 kilometers or closer. Then we would begin our flight, climb to altitude, to try to intercept them before they were directly over us, and then be able to pursue them for the next 10 kilometers before they finished their egress. And we did that because we wanted to have them on radar and on camera, and because we had to be vectored into them. We learned a lot by being in close proximity to the UAPs. Namely, on the bottom left of the screen, you can see, we're about 200 meters, 150 meters away from actually the Class 8 Hornet. And the ground team and the photo with the helicopter is actually the same event. So you see in that screen grab, the helicopter that we're in, and with Jake's pilots, and the Hornet, same event, same time. They're saying, "Hey, look out your left window. There it is, right out your left window." We've never seen a UAP from the air ever. But from the ground, obviously they could see us and the UAP in multiple bands of multiple spectrums of camera, and they could see us both on radar, so they're vectoring us. And frankly, we were worried in the air, like, we don't want to have a midair here. Like if we can't have radar and EO/IR coverage, then we can't do air-to-air intercepts because we haven't seen them from the sky yet. But we were able to experience some effects of their propulsion systems by being in proximity. So that was very interesting. Obviously, in the future, we'd love to have a camera ball that can see in multiple bands, so we can actually do a true air-to-air intercept and not have to break it off when we got to set a range of our own instrumentation. So the UAPs can be broken down into different missions. For example, the Tesseract's probably a sensor. The Class 1's probably low-vis reconnaissance. The Class 2 is probably high-speed reconnaissance. Each UAP probably has a specific mission. Some UAP carry each other, act as transport for other UAP classes, which again, you can unravel that a lot and start to derive propulsion limitations perhaps, and other specific mission-focused reasons of why they're being deployed the way they are, and what their use may be and what they may be focused on. So with that, I'm going to kind of break away from, the generic, if you will, kind of overview of UAPs, the classes, and how we got here, and start to get into, okay, kind of so what, and we'll kind of morph into that. But in the bottom left, you see, the Class 1 Tesseract, and you see, I believe it's a Shaheed that we pulled up. They're not the same. There's no mistaking. They're, if we're out running events, looking at technology currently deployed by all of the enemies of the West, and also Western technology in the sky, and running events against that technology, you would think we can pick and choose and understand and decipher when it's a drone and not a drone, or runs a balloon and not a balloon, or how to do balloon or everything else. So clearly, the thing on the left, the Tetra is not a Shaheed, does not have wings, does not have propulsion, does not fly like that, is enveloped by some kind of vapor cloud which reflects sunlight. There's just so many things that the morphology is clearly different, and it's quite frustrating to hear folks who don't have an open mind and don't actually want to hear and learn because of their closed-mindedness, that they can't understand that the morphology it's just day and night. There's no comparison. So obviously, we will not want to impugn our reputations by miscalling these things, which is why we're hesitant to enumerate new classes until we actually have real data. So I've kind of left up there the facts of what we see in these UAPs so that you can read them and understand. I'm not going to go through all of them except for to say we have UAP repeatedly overflying us in close proximity. They're extremely, extremely hard to image. We've spent millions of dollars in equipment, millions of dollars in equipment to try and image these. And the imaging is never sufficient, never better than what you're seeing on the bottom left of that screen. It's always a little bit fuzzy. It's always a little bit unclear. Unlike prosaic items, you can get very clear images of balloons and drones and planes, very clear. UAP, you cannot. And I have seen images under different conditions from a government somewhere that I cannot discuss that were very clear. And those systems are superior to the systems that we can enjoy. And they cost more and they happen to be in very close proximity, which I think is the only reason why you can get clear imagery is when you're within probably 200 meters and have the right equipment. So for what it's worth, most UAP we observe are probably 1 to 3 meters across. Try and observe something 1 to 3 meters at 5 kilometers, which is a common distance, and you're going to get something fuzzy and small and hard to see. The UAP on the bottom left, that was probably about 1,200 meters above us when the image was taken, maybe-ish. Probably call it slant range. 2 kilometers, so 1 to 3 meter object, 2 kilometers, very hard to see unless you have the best equipment available, or unless you close that range, which was our effort with the helicopter. In the future, maybe we can get one that has a camera ball, like I said. So what's very interesting is this still was actually taken from 2021, our first ever story of UAP. The same day we went back and found on footage UAP in proximity to commercial aviation. This is not in a commercial air corridor. This is an aircraft coming into land at a small regional airport. We are looking at its tail number for reasons, and we never even noticed the UAP until in post after we had seen the flight of 7. We said, hey, let's go see if we can find more, and we did. We found more in our footage. So once you know what to look for, they are findable. But this just goes to show these things are a risk. They are a risk to commercial aviation. They are in our airspace, commingled with commercial aviation. And what happens if there's a collision? What's it mean? Have there been collisions or near midair collisions? So, and as I already described, I have yet to see one from the sky without myself, and any systems that have seen them from the sky that I'm aware of have been with instrumentation for the most part. There are some limitations or exceptions. So maybe the pilots in that plane can't see the UAP that's right there if they were looking. That's what I'm getting at. Also, we need to think about, I talked about the blue bucket, the red bucket, and the other, but what if they're all red? What if the other should be red and not yellow? Maybe we should change our mindset here a little bit. Friendly elements don't fly in your airspace over national security events when you're employing special technologies to defend yourself. And they don't come hang out and watch those things necessarily. I would think a friendly element would be at more friendly locations, the Super Bowl, UAP overflying the Super Bowl and hanging out and watching that too. How about the inauguration, or how about anything else prosaic, that's not national security related that they could be attending that don't appear to? Why is it only at national security events when special technology is in use that they show up and hang out? And if they're friendly, why would they hang around our aircraft? It's almost like they're here measuring our systems and measuring our ability to interdict, observe, and react to them. So I think it's something we should absolutely think about is whether it's other or an enemy of the West that's controlling these craft. We have to consider that they might be red and they might be the enemy. And are we prepared to react to that should that enemy choose to do more than look? Frankly, this is a global problem. We get sent in videos often through various relationships from all over the globe, from the Middle East to Australia to the United States to Europe, South America. And when we take the measuring stick of the UAPs that we have terabytes of data on, we find that we can kind of sort at least knowns from what is sent in. not to diminish what other people might have, but based on the ample data we have and the classification system, we're able to kind of say, okay, this fits a class or it doesn't. And when it fits a class, it's helpful because now we can kind of measure, okay, somebody in Australia is sending me a jellyfish. I can quantify what that is, the altitude, the direction it's probably flying, how long it was probably in the air, what configuration it was in as it flew through. There's all kinds of things we can now derive from that. Or if somebody sends in a yet undiscovered class, like we don't have much to do with that other than say, that's cool. There's there's video of a thing. Again, you can't do much with just videos. So we also need to consider, like I said, worst case. The UAPs are on mission. They're conducting operations against us and our facilities, and we're not. We're just watching them kind of waving as they fly by and maybe molesting them a little bit with the helicopter and piss them off. But that's it. We're not doing anything other than that. It is interesting to note that when we do interact with them, when we do intercept them, it affects their longevity. When we intercepted the Class 8 from the image that I showed earlier, that was like on a Tuesday, and I think it was Skywatch around typically through Sunday through Saturday. So that was early on in the week, and they quit coming after that. They knocked it off. They left the event after we got within a couple hundred meters of one. So, why? That's very interesting. Do they think that we can't see them? Why would they knock it off? Are they worried we're going to escalate ourselves because we have escalated, which is the next logical step to take, right? So frankly, we need a global presence to get after this. We need citizen scientists. We need people. We need grandma with their iPhone to be able to help with this problem, not just people that have millions of dollars worth of equipment. Tracking UAP is very, very difficult. It's not scalable what we're doing. The systems we employ cost, I think we're probably about 1.75 million all in right now with things that are currently deployed. And to even understand and modify the equipment was another couple million. I mean, we're talking big money here. It's just not scalable. No business can spend that kind of money on a witch hunt, on a fringe science problem and make money. It's just not viable, and governments don't have the stomach, frankly, to chase that. So monolithic solutions are not the answer. This can't be done by buying 20 more radar trucks and modifying more trailers and kitting them out. This is not how this can be solved. We have to have a team of teams. We have to figure out how to use consumer grade and prosumer equipment and weaponize that equipment to defend ourselves against whatever this is. So observations are increasing. We are getting videos. So understand, before 2025, me or my team had never seen a UAP with the naked eye, ever. We had looked many times with telescopes, with cameras, with thermal cameras. We had looked and we'd never seen them. Now that's partly because we didn't have a team deliberately just scanning the sky for UAP. We're focused on a lower level, call it 10,000 feet AGL and below. We weren't looking for anything higher than that for the events we were running. But also when we had UAP and tried to find them, we never could. So now that we have, grandma from Australia sending us in videos of jellyfish, that tells you that they're lower and closer than they were before. So why are they lower and closer? Why are they coming close enough for us now to get them on video without having to zoom in? Like, that's a big deal. And I don't think that's discussed enough of why there's more videos that do fit the measuring stick of the 11 classes. So now we can quantify, like, look, this is a US government accepted classification schema. And now we're seeing these in other localities. Why? Why don't we need a $5 million, $4 million solution deployed to detect them? Why can they be detected even in transit with other technologies? And I would argue that they can be detected in transit. The dog whistle brings them low level to you, but they are in transit in our skies quite often. And we'll get into that a little bit more. So we should be asking ourselves, what tools are available? There have been some valiant attempts to develop tools. There's people in this conference developing tools. And I would offer, we need a team of teams. We need to work together at a global level to combine resources. So crowdsourcing, is the methodology. If you extrapolate the data we have now from 5 years of watching UAP with my team, we think there's 15,000 sorties of slow-moving UAP per year in the United States alone. That's actually a little bit low. We went conservative on that effort, on that estimate. And that's based on, if we have a bubble, call it 60 miles wide that we can see of the UAP corridor as they move in over our bubble. And we extrapolate out how many days per week we make observations, how many per day. It does vary per day of the week, day of the month, and time of day, what class you're going to see or not going to see. The environment matters. So when you combine all these factors together, we come up with about 15,000 sorties of slow-moving UAP. And then we've seen the class 2 Tic Tac. We've seen it. We have it on radar moving at Mach 30. And you can't see that and you can't hear it. If you don't have a radar, you're not going to know it's there. And a radar that's been modified, you're not going to know it's there. So therefore, how many of those are happening? What I can tell you is citizens are sending in videos, and Pro Pixel has talked about this, his discoveries, and wow, I see a prosaic UAP and something else is there in the noise, and sure enough, he finds things moving at terrific speeds through the videos. So there's much more to learn from the UAP. They've taught us a lot. And frankly, 15,000 sorties of enemy craft in the United States per year is a big problem, right? How much sovereignty do we have over our airspace if somebody has that much impunity to move their airspace unmolested, uncontested, and with freedom, complete freedom? That's a major problem for us. So it should also be understood that we need an authority on this. Who is that authority? Is it the Sol Foundation? Is it AIAA? Is it Enigma Labs? Like who is the authority? It's my opinion, it needs to be a nonprofit, and needs to be a nonprofit that is solely focused on UAP detection and tracking. It could be a for-profit, but at the end of the day, there needs to be one entity that can rally, that governments can trust, that citizen scientists can trust, and that grandma can trust. When grandma sees something weird in the sky, she hears a bump in the night, she pulls out her camera and videos it, she should be able to get an answer and trust what it means, and not have to be initiated or believe in anything or have any knowledge. You should be able to upload a video and say, I saw something, what is it? And get some kind of feedback. Hey, that's a African swallow carrying a coconut, right? Like who knows what it was, but not a UAP. Or hey, that's UAP. It's a class 4. So that entity needs to be able to provide narrowly focused inputs into what's happening. We have a very good measuring stick. I'm sure if we combine forces from my data and make it our data, which needs to happen, I'm sure we can find more classes of UAP that we can actually define. Maybe we can define with more specificity how many sorties per year are happening. Are they only happening in the West? Are they happening all over the world? Are they getting closer and closer? We can't define that yet. And running very expensive events is not gonna help us understand that unless we can crowdsource it. So at the end of the day, UAP are a risk to human lives. They are in our airspace. Being able to detect and track is where we all need to be focused. What's it going to take until we collectively care? Is it going to take an incursion that results in the downing of a packed airline and the death of hundreds of people? Has that already happened and we just don't know it? What's it going to take? Is it going to take one of these things crashing into the Super Bowl and death and mayhem ensuing and a crisis, or can we get ahead of this? If we can't quantify it, then we can't react to it. And if this is an enemy element that we have not quantified, maybe that 15,000 should be 40,000, right? Maybe they're all in our airspace all day, every day. We just have no idea. We've got to figure that out. So with that, I'll finish presenting. I think I left 20 minutes here for Q&A, Reed. I'll end this presentation, and then we can do some Q&A from the audience if you like.
Thank you, James. Really important perspective and field insights and an articulate expression of the implications. Really appreciate it. For those who would like, I saw in the questions, the comments, there was some who were not up to speed on the classification system developed pre and post Skywatcher. I have a deep dive conversation with James Fowler on Emergent. I put the link in there, time-stamped right to that part where we're talking about classification, so you can get up to speed there. We have a lot of questions, and I want to get to as many of them as possible. So let me dive in here and do my best to quarterback these and get these to you, James. All right. Okay, we can start at that classification type level. What kind of anomalies did you correlate? Were you able to correlate with each type of UAP? Electromagnetic, GPS related, time related?
So we do have microwave emissions from all classes of UAP that we've observed. This is one of the observations we've made, microwave effects on our equipment when we're flying in close proximity. We haven't quantified yet the threat to human life of those microwave emissions, and microwave emissions have been used from a defensive or actually offensive UAP perspective. So that's one of the things we've noted. We've also had, I don't have good data on magnetic anomalies, although I have good human observations of magnetic anomalies. I don't have measurements to quantify that. That they've been reported more specifically when they flew in close proximity to our talk when we were with Skywatcher.
Follow-up question on that, on the electromagnetic interference. How are you able to discern this as kind of an offensive act versus potentially incidental or as a result of, unintended consequences between observer and observed? What made you feel like this was a directed energy weapon or attack?
Well, I can tell you, the Department of War just admitted that they had high energy weapons, DEWs, direct energy weapons. That was something that the West has delayed talking about because deploying such technology right now is considered an act of war. Talk about Havana syndrome and people getting zapped with energy weapons. In the West, that is akin to shooting a bullet or a missile at somebody. When I can tell you the government has had UAPs hit them with energy weapons, that's a known fact in multiple channels. It's a real fact. It has really happened, and it's happened to us. So if friendlies don't do such things, we have not been hit with energy weapons that we know of when we're flying in close proximity, but we have measured energy, microwave off of them. So I think that there's an ambient microwave emission coming from UAPs that we have direction found and geolocated reliably. And then there's also instances where equipment is directly impacted, and perhaps humans, from such emissions, not the ambient ones, but actually when they're more directed. So.
Okay. Moving through kind of different traits of the classifications, what are the traits and perceived intentions of the class 6? That's the one that used the directed energy weapon, question mark.
I'm sorry, say that again.
What are the traits and perceived intentions of the class 6? And I think the questioner is asking if that was the one that used the directed energy weapon.
It is the one that used the energy weapon against us. So the traits are, it vibrates. It looks like a crystal. On the Skywatcher website, I think it still has, the data we fed it of what a class 6 looks like, and that's actually pretty accurate. It looks like a diamond. When it vibrates, it has a kaleidoscope or prism effect, and then it quits vibrating. It looks more like a teal, light blue colored crystal. They fly sometimes in sorties of 2 or 3. And the one time it hit us with an energy weapon, we were doing something they can't talk about that was less defensive in nature, and it affected us first. So.
Okay. This is a question on detection. Based on your experience, do you believe that the passive radar presented would detect all of the UAP types or classes, or only a small subset would be observable with passive radar?
There are multiple systems, including passive radar, that routinely pick up UAP. It really comes down to the ability to distill what you care about from the noise. And passive radar, I believe, does work. We have deployed passive radar, very high-end passive radar, and not made observations. Again, you have to modify load sets and change things up to be able to see the UAP like we have with active radar. So passive radar is not the panacea. It is a poor man's crowdsource capable solution if you have the right geometry of transceiver or transmitter to your passive radar receiver to be able to make those detections. You also have to have the right frequencies to make sure that you can distill down a 1 meter object from the noise. Understand, when passive radar is deployed against air-based objects like airplanes are meters, tens of meters sometimes in size. And so, if you take like the Kraken SDR and use that, well, you have to spend the time and energy to build a product that will work. And I don't think that current iterations that I've seen are sufficient or have been distilled down to be targeted UAPs. It'd be an R&D effort, in my opinion.
Okay. Reversing a little bit to the directed energy side, can James say any more about the effects of the energy weapons they experienced?
Yeah, sure. So it's my belief that this was a board level chipset attack against our technology. Most modern circuit boards have technology on board that if there's an overpower situation, that they will turn themselves off to prevent damage. And I believe that's what probably occurred, understanding our systems from inside of vehicles, inside of metal enclosures. So it's significant energy at very sophisticated frequencies and bandwidths and power, very high-end technology to do these things, to turn off our equipment.
Okay. We have two questions about the dog whistle. I'll combine them. What does the dog whistle consist of? And second part from another questioner. Let me see if I can get it up here. I can't, but I think the question was, is there any intention to release any insight into what that mechanical signaling is and how it can be further developed?
Yeah, so I won't get too hung up on the dog whistle. A lot of people want to know, it's like you tell a child they can't have something, they want it more. The dog whistle is very effective for calling in UAP. But we've chosen to protect that technology. Number one, because we spent a lot of money developing it. Number two, because it's not a defensive technology. If you're going to call in something like a UAP, maybe you have other reasons than just looking at it and studying it. And if we release this to the world, does it become less effective? Do we have to now develop a new way to call them in? What happens if there were 10 dog whistles going on at the same time? Who knows? But maybe it becomes non-useful anymore. And now you can't call them in. Now you can't do things with them. So there's a lot of reasons for national security, for the good of humanity, and for proprietary business reasons why that should not be released. I will tell you, like we described it with the Skywatcher team when we went public with this technology, it is electromechanical. It's not just technology. There's actually a mechanical, there's actually a physical application of technology, not just turning technology. It's not you just turn on a box and step back and watch. That's what I'm saying.
Right. Okay. Follow up for myself. Via the emission of that signal and UAP responding, do you have any insight into kind of the pattern of response itself? Are they acting defensively? Are they acting out of potential observational curiosity? Or does it correlate with something more of a direct incursion into your operations?
I think we talked about this on your podcast. It seems to be that they're probing our defenses. They'll show up high level, then they'll come lower. They won't fly right over us right away. They'll offset 5 or 10 kilometers north or south of us, or east to west of us, and over days and weeks get closer and closer and more provocative, which, by the way, matches our ISR tactics overseas. Very similar constructs. Again, which is why I think it's less defensive and more offensive, because you do ISR to collect data to do operations. That's why you do ISR. So it very much matches what I would anticipate an offensive technology deployment scenario. And those methodologies do get more aggressive throughout an event until they culminate in either us ending the event or doing something back in their direction, like a helicopter intercept, or maybe something else that provokes them to change and do something, which is part of the process, right? How many years do we have to sit there and look at it and wave at it until we can actually do something about it? How many years do we have to watch it until we can provoke it to see what happens, which is frankly where we're at. We're no longer at the watch it and just sit on our hands. Why should we sit on our hands? It makes no sense. So.
Okay. We have a question right here in the chat from Jerry Tedesco. I would be curious about the signals James claims they have detected. I'm assuming that's the detectable signature of the UAP.
Yeah. So actually, the first time we ever found UAP, I tasked my SIGINT team, and I had professional former U.S. government, big big U.S. government prime contractors on site with the best of the best equipment, and tasked them without telling them why to look to expand their envelope for what they're looking for signals for a lot of reasons, but also that envelope included the UAP signals that my OSINT had guided me to. So 1.6 was one of the frequencies, but I didn't tell them that. I told them look between 1 and 3 gigahertz with an emphasis at 1.6. And I can tell you that they found emanations, microwave emanations above and below those frequencies and within those frequencies. There is a pattern. I will say they're a narrow band to begin with, and they do change to wideband. I won't talk about how narrow and how wide. An RTL SDR, an EDSB 205, 56 megawides is not enough. You need much wider technology, much wider bandwidth capable technology to be able to detect them or actually collect on them than consumer or prosumer level technology. So most technology, we're talking $20,000 SDRs to be able to collect the signals, much less direction find them.
Okay.
The lowest technology for direction find geolocation cost about $150,000 starting per box. So I need 2 to 3. So
okay.
Very expensive and very hard to direction find and geolocate them. Detecting is easier, but once it goes to the wideband waveform, very hard to do anything with that.
Okay. A few more questions on classifications. Do you have any thoughts on the black triangle phenomenon versus what you have observed? It appears black triangles and pictures are very stationary with orb-like propulsion areas. I'm sure I understand that last part.
Yes, it's quite intriguing. I have no data on the black triangle. I'm not really going to talk about it other than to say I've had members of my team see them and take a photo with their cell phone. The photo looks like a potato because it's a cell phone, near dusk. But if I had data, I'd love to opine, but I really don't have any data on that.
Okay. Any insights or reflections on plasma and UAP?
Yeah, it's my belief that plasma is present on all the UAP classes we observe. I've sat with plasma scientists. I've sat with scientists of other expertise. And I do believe part of the reason why these things are able to break the sound barrier without making noise, that we're going to find that that's plasma. Understand that all the technologies we're seeing are 2 or 3 generations minimum ahead of anything that's open to the public right now or known or knowable. Understand I have government scientists and engineers asking me the same questions. So I'm assuming they're not seeing the latest and greatest, although maybe they're at a place where they should be 50 years ahead of us, but they're asking me questions like they're not, at least on this topic. So
okay.
Telemetry, how do the UAPs know we're chasing them? Who's telling them that we're going to intercept them? Who's telling them we're aiming something at them that should be of interest? How do they know? So that telemetry, the ability to fly in close formation with no obvious ability to see, there's no camera balls, there's no wings, they're doing things, but they're still in close proximity without colliding. And moving as a formation, that's a sophisticated effort. In an object the size of 1 meter or 2 meters across, that's a lot of technology to put into one little device and not have RF emissions that seem to correspond necessarily. The propulsion as well, a mystery. We can create plasma in space, but how do we create plasma in atmosphere? I've seen it in a lab at a university, small little sparks of plasma, but I've yet to see anybody create, a plasmoid free floating moving through the atmosphere outside of a lab environment with instrumentation a 1/4 inch away. So it's my belief that plasma is involved in every UAP class. It's also my belief that that is unexplainable.
Question similar to the one asked of Gary Nolan. Can you confirm no UAP landings have taken place as a result of your operations, that all UAP were aerial, no physical recovery of any kind?
No physical recovery of any kind. I can't confirm that any didn't crash. I told you, I think I've seen 5 crash. The technology we're using.
Class 5, a class 5 UAP?
Class 1s and class 5.
Okay.
So, or excuse me, class 8. Class 1s and class 8. 4 class 1s and 1 class 8.
Okay.
Of the 5 that we think we've seen crash, we didn't find anything when we looked, but in each case, we weren't there for that mission. So we had to delay, or because of events that occurred beyond our control, delay the ability to go search. It wasn't like we had a deliberate search team ready to launch a helicopter and go find it in the moment. So I believe they have crashed, but we have not been able to find them. And I will also add, it's my belief the reason why I think we caused them to crash. Some of the things we're doing with the dog whistle and other activities in the environment, perhaps I won't go into details, but perhaps enabled them to not fly anymore.
Okay. A few kind of nuanced questions here. This is a long one. When performing aerial intelligence operations, the horizontal signal and the vertical signal created from antenna RF samples are commonly known as angle errors. These angle error signals indicate the angular distance between the center of the antenna beam and the position of the object within the antenna's beam. Can you describe what the angular error has typically been on the radar equipment that you are using?
No. And I don't want to get into RF physics and theory. I'll just say that I'm just going to skip that question completely. It's too complicated for 2 minutes. So
okay, and we have a little bit more time. We're going to go over because the next session is the closing session, and I'm one of the moderators of it. So I've verified that we can do that. So we're good on time, James. If you're good on time.
Okay, wonderful.
Oh, okay. Let's see here. Okay, I've got a few questions about your new company and your new efforts. I'd like to save those for a minute. And maybe I'll just touch on the several, if not numerous, psionics related questions. We have a question about psionics, whether they are able to detect only one class of UAP or multiple. And then there's a question about Michael Herrera stating that he worked with the Skywatcher team to quote summon or quote bring down UAP. Is there any validity to those claims?
So I don't think that we've conducted, again, we ran operations. We were very much in the effort. Some of the Skywatcher team even talked about publicly trying to capture one within the year. We were not focused on a scientific, white paper driven effort. We were very focused with Skywatcher, as all my events is an operation for cause and effect. Cause being us eliciting a reaction from UAP, and effect being walking away with one on a pike, right? That did not happen. While my team was very focused on operations on the technical side, on the psionics side, they were also very focused on operations. Things were very ad hoc, very rapid. Understand we might get 50 sorties in a week of UAP activity. Okay, out of 50 sorties, maybe you get 5 or 7 at the same time in the same hour, right? How do you distill that down into scientifically validated data? It's taken us 5 years to get this far with what I just presented. There needs to be a lot more research on the psionics side. I don't think that topic is done with UAPs, but I would offer on the technology side, we've made leaps and bounds over 5 years of deliberate operations. And we've not done that with psionics, and I think they should be separated, because you cannot do scientific discovery when you have, when I'm changing locations every week, running these things randomly, moving teams in and out. There's just too many variables. And you never know what variables cause and effect. So I would love to see another entity without my team involved whatsoever, or my technology involved whatsoever on the psionic side. Go do scientific level cause and effect, do it ad nauseum, bring in passive non-RF emitting technology, and see what you see. And I think that once that is established, that would be interesting to marry these two technologies together.
Okay.
In terms of anybody claiming, psionic asset, I would use that very loosely. There's a lot of people talking about being a psionic asset. I don't know what constitutes an asset. I know words have meaning, and words are distilled down for a reason. I think some of that verbiage is loosely used. I will not speak ill of anybody in this topic, because what I don't know, I don't know. And frankly, we segregated my tech team away from the psionic side of the house by kilometers away from each other. So frankly, I'm not an expert in that side of the house purposefully. And I won't demean or speak ill of anybody making those efforts or claims, other than to say I know what I saw, and I did not see anybody ever make a cohesive, reliable, repeatable statement from the psionic side that married up or corresponded to the physical technology side. That does not mean it didn't happen. I just didn't witness it.
Okay. We have a couple questions on the current state of Skywatcher and its willingness to make data available. Of course, that's you're no longer with the organization. Unless you have anything you'd like to say on that, I can skip those and we can move on to talk about your company, your efforts, and going forward.
Skywatcher has a lot of data. I don't know if they'll make that data available or not. Again, it's not as easy. Like if tomorrow they just dropped, a drive with 10 terabytes of data on it, what does that do for anybody? We have terabytes and terabytes of data. Data doesn't mean anything without data can mean something, but you have to coalesce it into a story to understand. You can't just look at one piece of data and say, aha, I got you. Maybe that's there buried in the data, but maybe it's not. We do need long-term, months-long scientific styled events to collect data that can be woven into a cohesive narrative of understanding. Right now you have a various myriad of data sets from various sensor types that may or may not be commingled in a way that is cohesive enough to include accurate timestamping down to the millisecond. Like that's not there with the current data set. So, if we drop all this data, what does it really do? It's kind of like dropping 3 million pages of Epstein files. Like find the noise, find the needle in a haystack. Good luck. And then add in there, now you're looking at something that's anomalous. And now you've just, I think, hurt the whole situation. So yes, they might choose to drop that data. I just think it hurts the cause, frankly, until we do a scientific level of series of events. I think it's for naught, honestly.
Okay. We're going to go to 10 minutes after the hour, folks. So hang tight and we'll join the next session after then. There's a couple questions about the most effective kind of citizen level activities that could be attempted, especially in terms of technologies that could be used. I guess, what do you think are the most promising forms of citizen accessible detection technologies and methods?
So radars are useful if you know that radar can detect UAPs. You have to be in the right band. You have to have the radar enabled to be able to make the collection. And you have to be able to be alerted when that collection happens. The purpose of a radar isn't to detect the UAP necessarily by itself. It's to enable a series of operations after detection. Just because sometimes on radar doesn't mean anything. It could be a bird, it could be a plane, it could be a balloon, it could be anything prosaic. So you need a second and third series of sensors that you have to queue to that radar finding. So, like I said, the first 2.5 years of our efforts, we were scanning the skies with no radar, and it took us 2.5 years to figure out how to make the radar work to make the detection. So, all that to say, a lot of people are focused on passive radar. I think a lot of people should instead be focused on imagery, very specifically IR-enabled DSLR cameras, such as the P1100. I think it's an Nikon P1100. It's a good camera. Marrying those up with gimbals and marrying those up with IMUs so that you can actually turn a camera system into a sensor. I don't think a camera, while it is a sensor, I don't think it's really a sensor until you apply an IMU to it and you can measure azimuth, look angle, time of day, GPS, RTK GPS information, the P1100 with the IR filter removed, right? And then you can have pods. So my focus, at the end of the day, to be able to see something, assume you're looking at 5 kilometers away, right? You might need, you're going to need a lot of magnification, optical magnification, not digital zoom to see these things reliably. You need, 40, 60 frames per second. You need as many pixels on target as you can, right? So you need to buy the highest end sensor you can, right? In the right band, and apply the optical magnification to be able to make the observation. But also you have to have the ability to zoom in and zoom out, which is why I like the P1100. If you're looking through a soda straw at 5 kilometers, good luck. You might not find it. We tried for years and didn't find them. It wasn't until we brought gimbal stabilized systems with an azimuth and elevation reading, then you can combine with other things. So I'd be very focused on democratizing DSLR capable IMUs that can feed a log to a nearby system so that you can queue a camera with a DJI Ronin or something else and turn it into an actual scientific instrument. At that point, we win. At that point, You have one of those per city, one of those for 50 miles, your odds of actually collecting viable, usable information skyrocket. And until we cross that gap to where somebody can order one of these things online and it's not some IP camera running on PoE from Ubiquiti, which we've tried, not enough pixel on target. Like it's all the problems I just described are the issue. You have to be able to zoom in, zoom out from medium to full zoom. You have to be able to view it on a network. You have to have slant range, azimuth. It'd be good to have other atmospheric information as well, pressure, temperature, all those things, RTK GPS in a package that you can bolt onto an SLR or other equivalent camera system. Those are the needs, in my opinion. Radar is not on that list for the general populace. It's too expensive and too hard and too much effort to develop, in my opinion.
Fascinating and quite the rallying cry, getting enough pixels on target, and just the accessibility factor is fantastic here and throughout all the talks at the summit. Here's a question: without attribution to a date, time, or location, what were some of the ranges and velocities that have been measured over the years, either before your new venture or presently?
We've seen them as fast as Mach 32 plus, and we've seen them as slow as flying with the wind while they overfly us. So, 5 knots, 10 knots. Some of these craft, all of them maneuver against and perpendicular to the wind, and some of them tack like a sailing vessel in the wind when they're maneuvering. And some of them seem to just kind of go into a glide when they get over us as well. So we've seen them as slow as 5 knots, probably. We've seen them, actually, it's not true, we've seen them hover. Seen the Tic Tac and the manta ray both hover, and the jellyfish. So 0 knots all the way up to 32, Mach 32. So.
Okay. This is a broad question. What do you think it is that we're dealing with here? What are your observations suggest thus far in terms of material, performance, origin, destination, etc.?
We're looking at a material science that's undiscovered to date, to my knowledge, paired with signature management that's beyond anything that I know that exists, paired with propulsion that doesn't exist to anybody's knowledge, and paired with telemetry done in a way that we can't understand yet. Combine those together, you either have a very, very sophisticated adversarial element operating in our skies, or you have something off planet. It's frankly, one of the two. And the odds of somebody flying 15,000 plus sorties per year over the United States with impunity and having leaps and bounds and generations ahead of anything we have today in the market, or is even known. When you talk to an AI about it or a scientist, they talk about, well, theoretically. They don't talk about, well, yeah, this team this year did this thing, and that could be nobody has that when you talk about it. So if it was one or two technology paths that were advanced, I would describe it to perhaps technology breakthroughs, but we're talking 4 or 5 minimum technology breakthroughs generations ahead. So 3 generational breakthroughs of anything we have, right? That's quite daunting. So
2 more questions to finish this up. Based on your announcement almost a year ago about your new company, will you be providing updates to the public on your operations? Will you be sharing your findings with the public or producing reports for the public?
That's a good question. I care about air defense and air intelligence. I'm very patriotic to my country, and I want to know what this is. Actually, my company is Compass Tech Group. I've had it for, I guess, about 4 years now. It's the company that I brought to Skywatcher to perform the work that I performed at Skywatcher. It's the same company I use for other endeavors on this trajectory. So Compass Tech Group's alive and well and running contracts. We will continue to do so. I will remain separate from Compass Tech Group involved in this topic because, like I said, we have to crowdsource, and we have to make discoveries, and we need more than just my team to be able to do these things. Not the dog whistle, but beyond. Gimbaled camera pods with sensors that have IMUs, that pixels on target, like that. That is what we're missing. We need to extend the bubbles. If we can have one bubble of $5 million equipment that can see 20 miles, we need things on the periphery that have miniature bubbles of, say, 5 kilometers each. Frankly, a camera that can gimbal. And then in the future, a way to network those together and use AI or use a group to point them all at an object as it moves from, one state to another, and, see it departing and pick it up on horizon the next. That's where we have to get. Until we get there, we will not be able to quantify this threat, and we will continue to be left with big questions and no answers.
Great. Last question is, can you share more about your new efforts detecting UAP in the field? What's up next?
There are some projects pending. We haven't stopped. We still continue to do technology development. Some of the IMU SLR things, literally in our lab, we have that ongoing now. So we're actively involved in this still. There are things on the literal horizon and other activities that are going to happen. And I would encourage folks who have something to give in this field to continue to give it. And we need to distill this down to a group from single companies and single individuals.
Excellent. A team of teams, as you shared. Thank you so much, James. Great presentation. Excellent Q&A and discussion to follow. That concludes this session, everyone. Please, if you would, head over to the lobby for the final session, the Strategic Solutions Roadmap. And James will get all these questions to you so that you can engage with them down the road. And we look forward to talking further and taking this where it needs to go.
Wonderful. Thank you, Reed. Thank you all.
Thank you so much.